perfection. Conceptually, one of the rarest forms of all media, signifying the absolute apex of all measurable factors. Better than the rest, unrivaled in all overall quality, practically being given the official label of art. And it's incredibly subjective. To some, maybe Logan is the perfect movie, to others, maybe it's Brother Bear. But among the film industry, it's currently the season to be ranking all sorts of films in all sorts of which ways. The 2020 Oscars are happening in about a week, and a lot of people aren't happy with the nominations, and really, that makes sense. Over the years, the trust and integrity in the Academy is getting more and more stained, as it becomes evidently clear that it's never really been about quality. It's about sending a message and knowing the right people. So in the face of corporate string pulling and feeling disappointed by the results, this new series will be scrolling through the best of the best when it comes to films to try and find some of the perfect films that have blessed our cinema screens in the past. The kind of things that really make a mark and resonate with everybody, not just the bigwig higher-ups and their band of commercial brothers. Sometimes we'll be tackling the films that deserved an Oscar but never got a chance, other times we'll be going over previous winners and assessing how impactful they really were. Perhaps some of these can even be considered full-on art. Whatever the case, it's a chance to celebrate the good times we've had despite the mess that is reality sometimes. Welcome to episode 1 of the Perfect Films saga. Now, close your eyes. When you think of what makes the perfect film, one of the easiest directions you might take to try and find that answer is to look for something artsy, something real pompous and sweet to really tug at those emotional heartstrings. Surely a perfect movie would hit emotions, right? And what better way to highlight those beats than by removing dialogue as a whole? You see it all the time in shorts, you see it in powerful ambient scenes, and you'll find it everywhere in Pixar's Oscar-winning 2000 hit, WALL-E. I think it's fair to say that WALL-E is proclaimed by most to be one of the greatest films of all time, the magnum opus of one of the most artistically sound film studios of our generation. It's poignant, it's simple, it holds a lot of weight, and it's very artsy. Trust me, I know, I'm a random guy on the internet. When WALL-E first released, I remember watching it in the cinemas at the age of 11 and being blown away. Kinda the normal response when it comes to Pixar, but I was a young growing boy and I'd only just gained access to the internet. I certainly didn't know much about the world around me, so seeing a story that combined both the sci-fi fantasy of space travel that I loved to see and the real-world message of pollutants on our planet was a real first for me. It was the first time I saw a real message in a movie and felt it. Beyond that, WALL-E also managed to break new ground for me by, for once, allowing me to enjoy a romantic film. As a kid, I hated romance, but somehow when it was two non-verbal robots expressing through like 5 words and some facial expressions, suddenly, then, it became bearable, if not endlessly charming. So WALL-E starts out in space with this wondrous chipper song playing in the background, opening up the idea of aspiring to see the great beyond. And as we pan down to Earth, we learn of the reality of the world. Earth has become overrun with trash and pollution, and all of humanity has left, leaving one robot and his cockroach friend. But this is no ordinary robot. While we see his job is simply to clean up the mess, it's clear there's a lot more human in him, ironically. He's listening to that music all day long. He fixes his tracks and continues where others have failed. And he has built up the concept of off hours from work and a physical home. Perhaps this is why he survived all those storms in the first place and everyone else perished. And with an animal companion, maybe he's a candidate to be a real Disney princess. But while his personality shines from every angle, he's still clearly flawed. He's innocent and unaware of the context around him. Sometimes it's a joke, other times it's a little more saddening. Every day he passes by hundreds of billboards highlighting the monopoly that devastated the world, and yet he's unfazed. Enamored even by the knickknacks he finds, by the humans on his TV, by the expanses of space itself. WALL-E has a job to do, but he makes it his own and wishes for bigger and better things. He wants adventure, he wants to be like humans. He wants to fall in love. Enter Eve, the perfect partner to Wally. She's different to him in almost every way. New and modern and advanced. She's dropped onto the planet for no explained reasons just yet, but clearly has a soul of her own. What follows is a ditzy montage of Wally being bewildered by her every move and making a goofy mess of himself in the process. Without any words, we understand exactly what's going on and can practically feel the same level of emotion he's feeling. From the nervous shaking when the ship first arrives to the heavy-hearted sigh when he's overlooked. And Eve isn't immune to emotion either. Even in work mode, she can become frustrated from failure and giggles in conversations. I mean, have you ever truly heard a robot giggle before? Am I weird for saying it's cute? I mean it is. How can you not say that this is cute? So anyway, the two end up at Wally's home due to a sandstorm, and we see more humanizing of both of the characters through their responses on different knickknacks. Modern as she is, she can still enjoy the little things when told to pay attention, though perhaps in a more intellectual manner than Wally. Having this moment of time between the two characters and very little plot is key to what makes this film effective, as we get to properly learn about both of these protagonists before the plot pushes everything forwards. By learning how both react to every scenario, we can learn to relate to them and root for them more when the going gets tough. Wally the film understands that stories don't need to be action plots forward at every possible moment. Sometimes the greatest scenes are the calm ones, with nothing but a prompt and a response. That kind of understanding is what births charm, and in this case, wholesomeness too. And it is quintessential for the success of Wally. But before we get further on with Wally, if you're liking my stuff, do consider subscribing. I've got some interesting directions I'd like to take this series in the future, so if you want to see it firsthand, you'd better subscribe. I can see the percentage of you watching unsubbed. Now, what truly sets Wally apart is the storytelling techniques used in order to encapsulate all of these elements. Pixar has mastered the art of show, don't tell, telling stories with maximum emotive weight without ushering a single word. And this element alone highlights every moment within Wally's world, and to continue this trend for a duration of 95 minutes is nothing short of extraordinary. And it's not just the lack of dialogue that gets its success across. The cinematography, of course, pulls many of the narrative beats, highlighting characters' wants and desires through the reflections in their eye lenses, or by showing a montage of struggling against an elongated conflict, whilst the animation acts to display every thought process in an otherwise non-expressive being. Through simple head motions or animated LED screens, you can understand the entire train of thought inside these characters with no additional aid. You don't need to hear their inner monologue to understand what is going through their head at any given moment. So let's hop away from the fallout and turn more to the Portal side of the film. Eve is sent to the Axiom, a great spaceship holding thousands of humans across space for finding organic plant life, and Wally naturally follows along due to his strong connection to her. There we meet the leaders of the Axiom, the captain and the autopilot machine, Otto. I know this film pronounces it as Otto, but while you're watching my videos, you're British too, so get used to hearing the word Auto instead. If you reach the end of this video, I'm sure you'll get a degree from Cambridge University and a British citizenship too, so congratulations. Now, while on Earth there are many messages and critiques that can be construed from the setting, like pollutants and climate change, monopolies and merely escaping your problems, the setting of the Axiom only acts to drive a whole new slab of warning messages and glimmer of hopes too. This is a Pixar film after all. One of the first things you'll notice is that the captain, along with every single human on the ship, is living practically the same life. All of them fattened up and relying on technology to get them absolutely everywhere. Hovering chairs may be the obvious example, but they're also glued to their screens, their products, and their social pressure to follow any trend that comes their way. They are, by and large, the ultimate consumers of, by and large, convenience. And that's clearly shown as a bad thing. It's somewhat a dystopian reality when you look at the bigger picture, and only tells more of the warnings of getting too comfortable with technology and corporations monopolizing every angle of your life. And while this is clearly a message on our uses of screens all the time, there is thankfully a positive underlying trait that breaches through the moment Wally steps, or I guess rides, onto the Axiom. and that is through human nature and the capability to grow beyond the technology right in front of you. As Wally is desperately trying to reach Eve on her transit, he accidentally releases two of the humans from their shackles, and while it's clear that human nature would allow them to be addicted to these force-fed technologies, upon being given the free will to look on their own, they open up to the world around them and choose to move outside of their regularly assigned lines. When it comes to the pool on the Lido deck, while it can be originally sad to hear the characters say,
I didn't know we had a pool.
And a nice joke to some, it becomes more pleasing when we see later on that their realizations open them up to enjoying the pool themselves, rather than sinking back into their convenient technologies again. It shows us that even if life was to get so dire as to turn us into formulated traffic, we still have the ability to grow out of it and into better, more aware human beings. And it all starts from Wally's clumsy behavior and his obliviousness to this new wave of technology. So reaching the captain, we see more of this humankind potential. He's originally caught up in his convenient routines, though even then he's clearly frustrated by his lack of opportunity to do anything else due to the ever-present autopilot. But once learning of Eve's discovery and the operation that follows it, he is blown away and ever inspired to research further into the discovery of Earth and all of its culture and experiences. And whenever dialogue is used, it is treated like a rare material to be refined to perfection, which is especially highlighted with the captain. Early on, we get stuff like Wally and Eve first meeting and trying to understand each other, which is fun despite the limited vocabulary, but my personal favorite example has to be here, with the captain choosing to research Earth through a variety of definitions, only for his final query to be this.
Define dancing.
Dancing.
Cross-cutting with the actions of Wally and Eve to essentially reinterpret the scene as something many audience members may not have originally perceived. The writing of dialogue is rare, but when occasionally used, it is some of the best examples I've ever heard in a film, and its rarity only highlights that even further. The film does still have moments of exposition though, it is kinda needed somewhere. We learn soon enough that this plant operation is being sabotaged by Auto, who secretly tries to abort the plant and again throws it away when Wally and Eve return to the captain, plant in hand. And though they're clearly meant to be the antagonist, they're not entirely an evil being. Like many of the other robots in this film, they're just following their directives and interpreting them as such, with Auto being told that the operation was cancelled due to failure and him not understanding that this line of thinking is false. He's working as intended, but it's more like his programmers had made a mistake. He's not evil, he's just following orders. Though I guess that alone can be construed as evil in some actual cases in history. But whatever the case, even with all these antagonists here, it's the Axiom's automatic system that's at fault. Still, he's the hurdle the characters must overcome, but making him a somewhat understandable character with normal motives rather than a cartoonishly evil, mustache-twiddling personality makes for the film to be more real and somewhat mature, if you wish to interpret it that way. So as Wally and Eve are chucked away for the second time into the waste disposal, we have two simultaneous character arcs forcing the plot forwards. Up top you have the captain lashing out over his robotic mutiny, while Wally is suffering from the attack, with Eve trying to rescue him, learning here how much she really cares for Wally, whilst Wally is finally aware of the bigger picture and making the plant his directive rather than Eve's affections. Fun fact, this scene originally had their roles swapped over, with Eve being the one that was damaged. However, flipped just works so much better in so many ways, at the cost of little interaction between Wally and the Wallays. But really, this kind of uphill battle in the last third of the film is a great way to expand everyone's story arc simultaneously, whilst keeping audiences as invested as possible. Seeing this lovable idiot we've seen playing with toys for over an hour now being crushed and maturing in his goals is both emotionally crushing and heartwarming, whilst the connection between him and Eve only accentuates the romance element even more. It just beautifully keeps everything all tied together. So upon escaping, the captain sends them a message to get to the Lido deck as he activates the final order, automating everyone all into one place and opening a pedestal to place the plant in. It's here we see everyone becoming detached from their monopolized reality as the captain fights Auto one final time, with everyone watching stunned. Really, this is the climactic moment that brings in that glimmer of hope and spreads the message out loud and clear. Even after generations of being force-fed convenience, the message is that humans can and do have the drive to be something bigger, even if for some it's literally the effort needed to stand on one's own feet, overpowering those that dictate you and taking control of your own life and future, for the good of everybody. But of course, there is one final major element that really glues this film together, and that is the stunning soundtrack underlying it. When words can't emote, the music certainly dictates the scene, and really, every track is a beautiful masterpiece, perfectly highlighting the dynamics of WALL-E's world. From the cheerful imagination of WALL-E's personality against the eerie Fallout-esque reality of Earth, transitioning into the portal feel of future tech and the automatic element of every aspect of life, simultaneously giving us so much emotion every time a character is on screen and making some of the most dire times dramatic and beautiful. Now, how often do you see moments like that? So with all the humans safe in the hands of each other, with the captain overpowering Auto into manual control and Eve successfully planting the plant in its place, the story is prepped for its happy ending, but there's one final piece to push in. The Axiom is readying to return home to a habitable Earth, but WALL-E was severely damaged in the plant process, and not just a simple electric stun this time either. So as one final moment of anxiety, we rush to Earth in record speed, and Eve flies WALL-E back to his home, repairing him with spare parts of him established at the start of the film. It's a success, but at what cost? It's the ship of Theseus philosophy. If you replace so many parts of the original, is it still the same thing, or is it just a replica? WALL-E is revived, but is back to his factory settings. His animated expressions are lost, his directives basic, his empathy lost, and his prized possession junk. One last moment of tragedy before the finale.
Eva?
What a love story. And such a subtle change to express our WALL-E to the factory default. And even though the plant was discovered in a random refrigerator and the surface is still plagued with sandstorms and probably uninhabitable, unfertile grounds, the humans stick around and have their happy life restarted back on Earth. WALL-E and Eve are together and the credits are free to roll, showcasing the progress humanity makes with a new aspiration to return Earth back to its glory days and keeping the environment in mind along the way. No more monopolizing technologies, just humanity, a few helpers, and the drive to be better than easy passive consumers. In a world that is seemingly more corporate than ever, WALL-E, the film, is truly a breath of fresh air. Sure, it was made by a large company and was designed to make profits, but Pixar is one of those studios that still exerts passion above everything else. It's no Disney remakes at the very least. And its message is simultaneously ahead of its time and not soon enough. These Oscars, and probably all of them going onwards, are gonna be frustrating, but while there are plenty of films that will be getting awards that they probably don't deserve, let us not forget those films that truly did leave a positive mark, whether they got acknowledged or not. Is WALL-E the perfect film? It may not be the absolute best of all time, everyone's opinions are different on that front. But what it achieves and the messages it tries to tell are some of the greatest forms of storytelling to ever be produced. From the characters, the cinematography, the animation, the editing, and the music, WALL-E is a beautiful film, and I strongly implore anyone who hasn't to do themselves a favor and go watch it. To me, WALL-E is a perfect film. Sometimes the film industry really does it right. But tell me, what perfect films do you want me to consider next? There's a lot of hate in the world, so I figured it might be good to get some positivity out there by talking about the best of the best. Maybe it got recognized, maybe it was shafted by the higher-ups, whatever it is, I would love to hear your suggestions. But for now, My name's been Daz. You didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. Also, you may have noticed that my normal credit rolls have disappeared. I've now officially closed my Patreon page. So thank you to all of my handful of Patreons over the years. I do still appreciate you, but potentially now I may be posting bonus content up on my Twitter in the future. So go head over there if you want to see more of me when it's not just a Monday.